In 2023, Russia splurged a mind-boggling $86.4 billion on its military, ranking it third in the world for military spending. Think about it. That's more cash than you can fathom, all pumped into guns, tanks, and bombs every year. They've got the biggest stash of nukes on the planet, and their fleet of ballistic missile submarines is second to none. But there's more. They're one of only 3 countries with those massive, world-shaping strategic bombers alongside the heavyweights, the US and China. And then there's Vladimir Putin. You've heard of him, right? He's not just the president of Russia, he's practically the puppet master of Russia, pulling the strings of power like it's nobody's business. With all that firmly in his grip, Putin looms as a colossal figure on the world stage, wielding more influence and power than possibly any other living soul on the planet. Entering Putin's crosshairs is like stepping into a crimson-lit danger zone. You definitely wouldn't want to provoke someone like that. But what's the outcome when you cross into Putin's danger zone and find yourself in his crosshairs? This video delves into Vladimir Putin's expansive crusade of deliberate killings worldwide. It unveils the Russian state's relentless pursuit of adversaries, defectors, dissenters, journalists, or anyone brave enough to expose Putin's connections to organized crime or earn his disfavor. In 2014, investigator Heidi Blake and her team delved into the mysterious demise of Scott Young. Young, a wealthy property magnate, met a grisly end by plummeting from the 4th floor of a London penthouse, tragically impaling himself on the spikes of a wrought iron fence below his window. The scene was nothing short of harrowing. Reports swirled regarding Scott Young's demise, particularly concerning his associations with several other individuals who had met suspicious ends, including the exiled Russian oligarch Boris Berezovsky. Shortly thereafter, investigator Heidi Blake received an unexpected phone call beckoning her to a rendezvous at an upscale London address. Arriving at the designated location, Blake encountered Michelle Young, Scott Young's wife, who revealed a shocking assertion. Her husband had been murdered. Michelle expressed her desire for Blake's team to spearhead the investigation into Scott's death. Michelle Young possessed a treasure trove of documents unveiled during her contentious divorce battle with Scott Young. Within this paperwork lay captivating revelations about Scott's intricate business entanglements with Boris Berezovsky, an exiled Russian oligarch vehemently opposed to the Kremlin, along with several other highly prominent Russians residing in the UK, all squarely within the crosshairs of Vladimir Putin's Russia. Delving into these documents, the team embarked on a journey to assemble the pieces of a complex puzzle. This mosaic not only linked Scott Young to Boris Berezovsky, whose own demise under dubious circumstances had occurred just a year prior, but also to a larger network of individuals, 14 men in total, who had met suspicious ends in Britain after drawing the ire of Vladimir Putin. Acquiring a substantial cache of documentary evidence, an intricate web of connections among a group of men collaborating to funnel illicit Russian funds into the United Kingdom was uncovered, with all these men meeting untimely demises. Utilizing a bespoke database, documents were indexed alongside a plethora of exclusive materials, enabling comprehensive searches across their dataset. Additionally, the team scoured public records from various legal proceedings and inquiries, augmenting the digital library. This exhaustive effort culminated in the unraveling of a narrative intertwining Russian money, betrayal, and murder. Moreover, they obtained hours of surveillance footage capturing Scott Young and his associates in the months preceding his death, as well as leaked audio recordings. Through meticulous reconstruction of discarded mobile phones and computers, a vast digital trove of evidence was amassed, supplementing findings with bags of evidence previously overlooked by authorities at the scenes of several deaths. Together, these discoveries painted a vivid picture of a disturbing pattern encompassing 14 suspicious deaths In the United Kingdom, a macabre sequence of events unfolded as individuals met their demise in various gruesome ways, falling from tall buildings, being discovered hanged, stabbed to death, or tragically caught under tube trains. These inexplicable and chilling deaths formed a perplexing pattern among these men. Simultaneously, Boris Berezovsky financed a team of investigators tasked with probing Vladimir Putin's ties to organized crime and his involvement in a string of terror incidents in Russia. Alarmingly, these investigators also met their end under suspicious circumstances, both within Britain and Russia, adding another layer of intrigue to the unfolding saga. One of the most notorious cases among them is the death of Alexander Litvinenko, a defector and former Russian spy who sought refuge in the UK. Litvinenko bravely exposed numerous atrocities linked to the Kremlin. His assassination stands out as one of the most infamous Russian killings in recent history. Poisoned with radioactive polonium, a lethal nuclear substance, Litvinenko endured a slow and agonizing death in a London hospital. We'll dive deeper into him later on. Under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, Russia has heavily invested resources in perfecting the art and science of targeted assassination. This enables Russian operatives to eliminate enemies of the state abroad without leaving any discernible trace, utilizing undetectable methods. However, they also possess the capability to carry out high-profile assassinations that unmistakably link back to Russia, serving as a clear message to adversaries. A stark example is the attack on Sergei Skripal, a Russian defector residing in Britain. Skripal was poisoned in Salisbury with the deadly nerve agent Novichok, a substance primarily associated with Russia due to its origin. This method of poisoning is unmistakably Russian, chosen deliberately to send a chilling message to defectors. Crossing Vladimir Putin comes with life-threatening consequences. Putin and the Russian state employs a wide spectrum of techniques for neutralizing its adversaries, ranging from highly sophisticated methods to crude, gangland-style shootings and stabbings. This comprehensive arsenal poses a significant challenge for law enforcement agencies, as it's often difficult to definitively attribute suspicious deaths to the security services, organized crime, or natural causes. This ambiguity complicates investigations and makes it challenging for authorities to address these deaths effectively. One nation that has experienced the harsh repercussions of Putin's disapproval in recent times is Ukraine. By late 1991, the Soviet Union experienced a wave of republics, including Ukraine, declaring independence from Soviet rule. This dissolution led to the emergence of 15 independent countries, including a notably weaker Russia. The once strong Soviet sphere of influence disintegrated as numerous nations toppled their communist regimes. Despite the end of the Cold War, the alliance in Europe persisted and even expanded. In 1999, NATO welcomed Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic into its fold. Subsequently, in 2004, 7 additional countries joined NATO, extending its reach deeper into the former Soviet sphere of influence. Consequently, NATO's border with Russia became the longest in history. Remaining between Russia and NATO were Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia, the last post-Soviet countries. Both Ukraine and Georgia harbored aspirations to join NATO, which made them targets for Russia and Putin's strategic interests. In 1994, Ukraine took a significant step towards NATO membership by becoming a partner, signaling its intent to align closer with Western security structures. By 2013, Ukraine was poised to sign an association agreement with the European Union, a move that would further solidify its ties with the West. However, Ukraine's pro-Russian government at the time abruptly rejected the agreement, opting instead to strengthen its relationship with Russia. The government's decision sparked mass protests across Ukraine, with hundreds of thousands of demonstrators demanding that the agreement be signed. Despite months of peaceful protests, the Ukrainian president responded with a brutal crackdown, resulting in the deaths of over 100 people and escalating tensions even further. Eventually, the pressure from the protests forced the president to flee the country, leading to a shift in power that threatened Putin's political influence over Ukraine. In response, Putin orchestrated a series of aggressive moves, starting with the annexation of Crimea in 2014, followed by the support of separatist movements in Donetsk and Luhansk, leading to their declaration of independence from Ukraine. This escalation ignited a conflict that has claimed the lives of 14,000 people and displaced nearly 2 million others over the course of 8 years, effectively destabilizing Ukraine and preventing it from moving closer to the West. In November 2021, Putin further escalated tensions by amassing over 100,000 troops along the Ukrainian border, accompanied by military equipment and conducting large-scale drills near Belarus. Despite denying plans for invasion, Putin presented demands to the West, including halting NATO expansion and moving military borders back to 1997 positions. Western leaders rejected these demands and reinforced their military presence in Eastern Europe. On February 21, 2022, Russian troops crossed into separatist-held territories under the guise of peacekeeping, prompting Ukraine to declare a state of emergency. Then, on February 24th, Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, drawing condemnation from world leaders and sparking anti-war protests globally. NATO's response force was activated for the first time, and the U.S. deployed additional troops to Eastern Europe. However, the international community treads carefully due to Putin's control of nuclear weapons and his threats against interference. The estimated death toll of civilians or unarmed individuals in Ukraine stands at 10,582 since the beginning of the invasion, with millions forced to flee their homes. Here are some more individuals who have faced similar consequences for crossing paths with the Putin-led Russian state. Back during the Cold War, amidst all the tension before the Soviet Union collapsed, there's this chilling story about a Bulgarian defector named Georgy Markov. He was living in London and was known for speaking out against the Bulgarian government, which was tight with the Soviets. One day, while he was waiting at a bus stop on Waterloo Bridge, he suddenly felt a jab from an umbrella wielded by a stranger. Weird, right? Well, it gets darker. Markov started feeling really sick afterward, running a fever, and ended up dying in the hospital from something called septicemia. The British newspapers at the time were buzzing with suspicion that he might have been poisoned, possibly with a deadly toxin called ricin. It's like something out of a spy thriller, but sadly, it was all too real. During the dramatic political showdown of the 2004 Ukrainian presidential elections, Viktor Yushchenko, running against the pro-Russian candidate Viktor Yanukovych, faced a shocking turn of events. Yushchenko mysteriously fell severely ill and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors later discovered that he had ingested dangerous levels of a toxic substance called dioxin, the same compound found in Agent Orange. This sinister poison disfigured his face, turning his skin yellow and leaving him scarred. Many fingers pointed towards the Kremlin, accusing them of orchestrating the attack, although solid evidence was never brought forth. Despite the odds stacked against him, Yushchenko miraculously emerged victorious in the election, becoming Ukraine's third president in a remarkable twist of fate. Back in 2006, Alexander Litvinenko, a former KGB agent and Russian defector living in London, found himself in a dire situation. Known for his outspoken criticism of Vladimir Putin, Litvinenko's fate took a dark turn after a meeting with two former KGB agents at a London hotel. Shortly afterward, he fell seriously ill and was hurried to the hospital. Tragically, 3 weeks later, he succumbed to heart failure induced by radiation sickness. Investigation revealed a chilling method of assassination. Litvinenko had been poisoned with a cup of tea spiked with polonium, an incredibly rare and highly toxic radioactive substance akin to uranium. Then there is the chilling saga of Sergei Skripal, a Russian defector and double agent for British intelligence, unfolding in Salisbury. He was discovered alongside his daughter Yulia on a park bench, both in a horrifying state, frothing at the mouth and drifting in and out of consciousness. Rushed to the hospital in critical condition, miraculously, they both survived. However, a police officer who responded to the scene also fell victim to the mysterious illness. Investigation revealed they had been poisoned by a deadly nerve agent called Novichok, which was absorbed through the skin. Shockingly, the poison had been concealed in a perfume bottle, cunningly sprayed on the door handle of Skripal's residence. Tragically, at a later point, a local resident stumbled upon the discarded perfume bottle in a bin and unknowingly gifted it to his girlfriend. Within minutes of applying the tainted perfume, she fell seriously ill and tragically passed away in the hospital 3 days later. In August 2020, one of the most recent and famous of these chilling incidents unfolded as Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny collapsed during a domestic flight in Russia. Rushed to the hospital, Navalny was placed in an induced coma, revealing later that he had been poisoned with a deadly Novichok nerve agent cunningly laced through the inner seams of his underwear. Miraculously, he survived the attack, but wasted no time in pointing fingers at his political rival, Vladimir Putin, holding him accountable. However, a Russian state investigation refuted Navalny's claims, asserting they found no evidence of foul play. After months of recovery in Germany, Navalny bravely returned to Russia, only to be promptly detained by authorities upon arrival. Following his sudden death in prison, Navalny's wife and many others placed the blame squarely on Vladimir Putin. Navalny, renowned as one of Putin's most vocal critics, posed a significant internal threat to the regime. Leading his own political movement, Navalny's organized protests, advocacy for human rights, and exposure of Russia's elite garnered widespread public support. Navalny had been the target of multiple attacks, signaling the grave danger to his life, leading to his recovery outside of Russia. Upon his return in 2021, he was promptly arrested. Facing a potential 3 decades in jail, Navalny's death was announced following his collapse after a walk. As evidenced, Navalny's demise wasn't an isolated incident among Putin's adversaries. In June of 2023, the Wagner paramilitary group orchestrated an uprising against Putin, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin. However, the uprising was swiftly quelled, and while there was a flurry of unverified reports, it was confirmed that Prigozhin had spearheaded the rebellion. Despite expectations of swift and decisive retaliation from Putin's camp, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. Nothing much happened. Prigozhin's mutiny was apparently regarded as a misguided decision made in error, an improbable scenario perhaps, but the saga didn't end there. In August of the same year, Prigozhin met his demise in a tragic plane crash, along with 9 others. The plane crashed approximately half an hour outside of Moscow, and the official narrative from Russia attributed Prigozhin's death to traitors to Russia. Notably, Russia's official media remained silent on the matter, while other outlets, including the Associated Press, highlighted the Kremlin's conspicuous silence regarding both Prigozhin's death and the investigation into the crash, raising significant suspicions. Another is Yevgeny Kamaganov, a Buryat journalist renowned for his critical articles targeting the federal government, wrote for Inform Polis during the period of around 2004 to 2005. He faced detention by the Organized Crime Division and was interrogated regarding his trip to Irkutsk and the Ust-Ordinsky district. Operating out of Ulan-Ude, the capital of Buryatia, Kamaganov briefly returned to his hometown after suffering a broken neck in an attack in July 2015. However, on February 27, 2017, he returned to Ulan-Ude. At the time of his death, Kamaganov held the position of editor-in-chief at the site of the Buryat People and Asia-Russia Daily. While the exact circumstances surrounding his demise remain unclear, Kamaganov was hospitalized on March 10th. Some accounts suggest he was assaulted by unidentified assailants, while others attribute his hospitalization to complications arising from diabetes. On March 16th, Kamaganov succumbed to his condition in the hospital, with the precise cause of death remaining undetermined. Sergei Yushchenkov, a prominent figure in the Liberal Russia Party, was known for his staunch advocacy of human rights and vocal criticism of Putin's administration and the FSB, particularly regarding their actions in the Chechen Republic. Tragically, on April 17, 2003, just hours after registering the Liberal Russia Party for parliamentary elections, Yushchenkov was fatally shot outside his Moscow residence. Mikhail Kodanev was convicted of orchestrating Yushchenkov's assassination, allegedly motivated by a $60,000 payout to gain control of the Liberal Russia Party's finances. However, Boris Berezovsky, an associate of Kodanev, maintained that Russian authorities were ultimately responsible for the murder. Nikolai Andrushchenko rose to prominence as a journalist at Novi Peterburg, a newspaper he helped establish in the 1990s. Throughout his career, Andrushchenko focused on exposing local corruption, criminal activities, and instances of police brutality. He was also an early critic of President Putin and his government. Tragically, on March 9, 2017, while en route to a meeting, Andrushchenko was reportedly ambushed and assaulted by unknown assailants. He lay unconscious in the street for several hours until a passerby discovered him and alerted authorities. Rushed to the hospital, Andrushchenko underwent emergency brain surgery and was placed in a medically induced coma. Despite efforts, he never regained consciousness and passed away on April 19th. Although some reports suggested Andrushchenko's injuries resulted from a drunken fall, the journalist had previously spoken out about being targeted in attacks on two separate occasions before March 9th, casting doubt on the narrative of an accidental injury. Another tragic incident was the case of Nemtsov. Boris Nemtsov's political journey began as a provincial governor in 1991, where he became the youngest governor in post-Soviet Russia. Rising through the ranks, Nemtsov served as Boris Yeltsin's deputy prime minister, positioning himself as a potential successor to Yeltsin's presidency. However, when Vladimir Putin assumed the presidency in 2000, Nemtsov's aspirations shifted. Initially attempting to collaborate with Putin, Nemtsov eventually joined the opposition, along with his party, the Union of Right Forces, after they were ousted from parliament in 2003. Nemtsov actively supported Ukraine's Orange Revolution in 2004 and vehemently criticized Russia's military interventions, including the invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Tragically, on February 27, 2015, while crossing a bridge near the Kremlin in Moscow, Nemtsov was fatally shot in the back 4 times. In one of his final interviews, Nemtsov expressed fear that Putin would have him killed. Following his death, the investigative committee initially considered Islamic extremism as a potential motive, but later, 5 Chechen men were arrested and convicted of his assassination, allegedly contracted to carry out the killing. However, the identity of the mastermind behind Nemtsov's murder remains unknown. The famous Boris Berezovsky, initially an engineer-turned-car salesman after the collapse of the Soviet Union, survived an assassination attempt in 1994 that tragically claimed the life of his driver. In the same year, Berezovsky acquired ORT, a television channel, and utilized its influence to support Boris Yeltsin's successful presidential campaign in 1996. Enjoying significant influence within Yeltsin's administration, Berezovsky initially expressed optimism about Vladimir Putin's presidency, foreseeing a continuation of Yeltsin's policies. However, tensions between Berezovsky and Putin quickly escalated, leading to Putin's seizure of ORT from Berezovsky, prompting Berezovsky to seek refuge in London. Granted political asylum in the UK in 2003, Berezovsky was convicted in absentia by a Russian court in 2007 for charges of fraud and tax evasion. Meanwhile, Berezovsky accused Putin of orchestrating the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko. On March 23, 2013, Berezovsky was discovered deceased with a scarf around his neck at his residence in Ascot, England. Also, Nikolai Glushkov, a close associate of Boris Berezovsky, met a tragic fate 5 years after his friend's untimely death. Glushkov, a businessman who previously served as the deputy director of Aeroflot Airline, fled Russia following accusations of fraud and sought asylum in the United Kingdom. In 2010, he was granted political asylum, but in 2017, a Russian court convicted him in absentia of embezzling over $118 million from Aeroflot. Following Berezovsky's demise in 2013, Glushkov vocally suspected foul play and expressed concerns about the dwindling number of Russians opposing Putin's regime. 5 years later, on March 12, 2018, Glushkov was tragically discovered strangled in his home. In April 2021, coroners concluded that Glushkov's death was indeed a homicide. Despite investigations, Glushkov's murder remains unresolved. Denis Voronenkov, despite his affiliation with the Communist Party from 2011 to 2016 and his party's alignment with the Kremlin, was considered an unofficial ally of the Kremlin for years. However, following his defection to Ukraine with his wife in October 2016, Voronenkov emerged as a vocal critic of Putin. He also asserted that his previous support for the annexation of Crimea was a result of political coercion. Voronenkov intended to testify against Ukraine's former president, Viktor Yanukovych. On the day of his assassination, Voronenkov had scheduled a meeting with Ilya Ponomarev, another former Duma member who fled Russia for opposing the annexation of Crimea. On March 23, 2017, Voronenkov was fatally shot in broad daylight in Kyiv. The assailant, identified as Pavlo Parshov, was also shot by Voronenkov's bodyguard and later succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. While Ukraine's prosecutor general Yuri Lutsenko asserted that Voronenkov's murder was a contracted hit, the mastermind behind the assassination remains unidentified and unproven. As said earlier, under Putin's regime, there's a notable surge in expenditures directed towards bolstering police and security forces. In 2020, a significant portion of the budget, 1/10 to be precise, was earmarked for domestic security. This perpetuates a vicious cycle of repression. As dissent grows, so does the need for repression, leading to increased funding for security measures. Individuals facing charges are confronted with a near-certain conviction rate. In 2020, an astonishing 99.64% of those brought to trial were found guilty. According to the World Justice Project, Russia consistently demonstrates higher levels of government interference in its criminal justice system compared to most other countries in the Rule of Law Index. Russia lacks an autonomous legal system. Rather, it operates under the law dictated by the ruler. In the aftermath of the January protests, over 11,000 individuals were arrested and 90 criminal cases were initiated. Additionally, around 200 journalists faced harassment and detention, highlighting the extent of the state's suppression tactics. The mounting evidence indicates that Putin's campaign of targeted assassination is, if anything, intensifying, and the number of his adversaries and opponents continues to shrink. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating content like this. If you enjoyed this video, you won't want to miss the one currently on your screen. Click it, and I'll catch you in the next video.